Hello everyone and welcome to Sunburned Albino Reviews The Sinking City. A review code for this game was provided to me by the PR agency of the publisher after I asked super nicely, so if you think that makes me a biased little asshole, then feel free to take everything I say about it with a burlap sack of salt. I've played the game for about 10 hours and am probably still not even close to finishing it because there's lots to do, so consider this an in-progress review. This review will follow the following followable format. First, we'll talk about the story, then the mechanics, then the polish, and then the overall fun. 4 distinct categories that will be graded separately using this scale. S being essentially perfect, all the way down to F being essentially existential blasphemy. NA is also an option if it seems like the game isn't really meant to score points in a particular area. Like if a game's story doesn't matter and isn't supposed to, then we'd give the NA grade to the story. This game's story does matter though, so let's talk about it. Story. So what is the premise of The Sinking City? Well, it's a Lovecraftian horror open-world detective action RPG third-person shooter, obviously. Set in the recently fictionally flooded town of Oakmont, Massachusetts in around the 1930s, I believe, The Sinking City follows a private eye's quest to find the source of his strange visions and dwindling sanity. As a newcomer to a fiercely traditional and closed-off town full of secrets, monsters, fish fuckers, and ape bangers, former Navy diver and current PI Charles Reed has to search for answers in an unforgiving and hostile environment, using his supernatural powers of deduction. Personally, I think this game's story really shines. The town has been devastated by a flood. There are flooded sections all over, with many locals living in squalor and filth as they wrestle with the creatures who have taken over parts of the area, as well as their own collective madness. As you walk the slimy streets, you'll frequently see people hallucinating, fighting each other, or just standing in a corner and crying. Speaking of the people, there are some peculiar breeds in this town, like one of the rich grand families of Oakmont, the Throgmortons, who are half ape, half human, but not for the reason you think. This dude's dad fucked an ape. Oh, is that what you thought? In addition to the apes, there are also fish people called Innsmouthers. They're pretty ugly. Imagine kissing those lips. They must hate cats. Now, this game is set in the 30s, and the developers post a little forward message before the start screen every time you boot up the game that's like, this game takes place in a time period where there was rampant discrimination against many types of people, which we believe is wrong, but we're preserving it for the purposes of painting an accurate history instead of pretending it never happened. And I think that's correct. Plus, who could they even offend? Just don't let any monkeys or salmon play this game and you're good. People will draw their parallels, but who's gonna willingly identify with a bunch of nasty fish freaks, am I right? Now, there's not much of the plot I can reveal without spoiling some things, so all I can say is that I find it to be engaging enough to go on long gameplay binges to figure out what's going to happen next, even despite problems in other areas we'll talk about later. The characters are distinct, with the exception of our protagonist, who's just low-voiced with almost no personality, but frankly, given the circumstances and his background, he acts in a way that fully makes sense. As you go through your investigations, you're able to take sides in certain conflicts and shape what kind of PI you want to be. Someone who doles out harsh justice, or someone who lets people walk, or someone who plays both sides and does what's most convenient for him. In the end, the story is immersive and spectacular, which earns it an A from me. Mechanics. Games live and die by their mechanics, so how do the systems in The Sinking City shape up? Well, the casework is multifaceted, with Charles Reed investigating crime scenes, piecing together events in his head, and seeing the unseen using his supernatural vision abilities, looking up information on places and people in different archives, and most of all, trying to locate all these goddamn street names on the map. This game makes you work for your clues. You don't automatically know where things are. The only quest markers are the ones you create and place in locations you think you're supposed to go. There is a lot of half-assed jogging in this game, because the whole town is yours to explore at your own pace, but the only vehicles are boats that are used to traverse the flooded sections of the maps, and fast-travel phone booths aren't very numerous. You have to discover fast-travel booths before you can warp to them, which is nothing new, but in the Sinking City you can only fast-travel between them instead of from anywhere, which given how spaced out they can be is super annoying. The early hours of the game can be especially hoof-heavy before you have most of these facilities unlocked, so if you see a compass icon on your compass, walk in that direction and get that thing activated pronto. Even more annoying is the fact that these fast travel stations are usually located almost a block away from any important locations you're trying to visit. You'd hope a phone booth would be right smack in front of the local hospital or newspaper archive, but nah, you usually have to round a corner and walk down half a street to get where you're going. Convenience is not this game's strong suit, and it slows the pace of an already slow game. I said I've played 10 hours, I probably solved 4 or 5 cases, including side cases. Traversal is unfortunately about 50% of the moment-to-moment gameplay. You're just walking everywhere. Here's the average case rundown for you. You'll walk somewhere to talk to a guy. That guy will send you walking over to a location to investigate. You'll investigate the location by walking around and find some evidence that requires a reverse lookup at one of the town's archives, which are different buildings you have to walk to. You'll find a new location to visit, manually located on your map via street names and intersections, and walk over to that. Generally talk to a person or clear out some monsters, and then walk back to the initial quest giver with your new intel. I told a dude in a wheelchair about all this walking, and he was like, shit, I wouldn't miss that. So map traversal is an absolute slog, no bones about it. On the other hand, something I do very much like is the combat. Throughout your stuff, you will encounter strange creatures known as wild beasts, and there are different variations with their own abilities and weaknesses. The game encourages you to run from encounters, but that's a load of bollocks. They just don't want you to get those sweet XP gains. Just take care that you don't happen upon any of the super buff ones before you have the weaponry necessary to take them on. I remember the first side location I tried to visit had this gargantuan freakish creature who two-shot me because all I had to fire at it were measly pistol rounds. You'll eventually get access to shotguns, battle rifles, molotovs, and grenades that make monster hunting easier, but those fights are consistently fun and some of my favorite experiences. The shooting is real solid. The Sinking City also deals in crafting, which is how you make ammunition. Supplies are scarce and can only be gotten from scavenging or as quest rewards. One pretty significant oversight in my mind is the fact that this game has no storage mechanic. So if you have max bullets or crafting materials and you try to get more, you'll just be full. This is especially annoying when quest rewards can give you major bullet hauls that you're not even able to receive because you've already been such an effective hoarder, and there's no coming back to reclaim them either. This weirdly encourages you to be more wasteful with your supplies, which I'm not a fan of, especially since the amount of bullets you can carry is so low to begin with, and investing in certain skill points only barely alleviates that pain. Speaking of skill points, this game's got skill points and experience gains. These range in usefulness from necessary because the game makes them necessary to 100% useless because the game makes them 100% useless. Take the experience boost skills, for instance. I hate when games put that in there because it just automatically dictates where my first 3 points are going. It's a gain investment the game is forcing me to make if I want to be maximally economical about my experience points, which means I can't spend them on anything actually useful until I already have the boosts. It's just a time delay between me and getting the abilities I would have gotten had the boost option not been there. Most of the other skills are minimalistic, like, ooh, you want 10% more health, and then the next one, ooh, you want another 10% more health? Like, get out of here. I don't need an extra half centimeter to my health bar so I can tank an extra third of a hit from an enemy, which makes no difference. There's also a skill that makes the man-eating eels that populate all the water in Oakmont do half as much damage to you, but in the 10 hours I've been playing, I've never had to swim anywhere. There's boats for that shit. Another skill reduces fall damage by half. I've never taken fall damage. I take the stairs. Other skills are nice, but not as nice as you'd like them to be, like a skill that gives you a 10% chance not to spend materials when crafting. Given that I have to spend 4 skill points just to get to that one, it should be a higher percent. Overall though, the XP system means that killing enemies and completing quests feels satisfying and rewarding. Another mechanic this game has is a sanity meter next to your health meter. As Charles continues to see fucked up shit like monsters and cut up human bodies and burn skeletons in illusory walls, his sanity can take a beating. While conceptually this may sound cool, the bar refills immediately after the thing that made it deplete is examined or killed, so functionally it just serves as a turtle crossing the road you have to wait for before you can keep driving on. Basically, you'll see a dead body or something and lose 25% of your meter, and then just stand around and wait for it to refill. The only time it really makes a difference is in extended combat with creatures, especially the bigger ones, where it drains constantly and makes you see visions and things that aren't real, which makes it real hard to shoot monsters in the face, I'll tell you what. But you can take antipsychotics, which are like medkits for your sanity, mid-battle to fill it back to max anytime. And those are the basics of the unique mechanics in the Sinking City. So I'd summarize it as traversal bad, shooting good, crafting good, lack of storage bad, investigations good, sanity whatever, and then I'd add all that up into a B for mechanics. Polish. Here's where the game gets absolutely demolished. The Sinking City has about as much polish as the shoes of a long-dead corpse. I was playing a pre-release version of this game, and so I hope to the almighty Cthulhu that a day one patch addresses some of this shit, but if it doesn't, then you must share in my pain. Remember all that stuff I said about fast travel and traversal and all that? Well, keep in mind that every time you fast travel, you hit a loading screen, and also keep in mind that that loading screen can take upwards of 30 seconds to finish up. The game also just stalls for no reason for as long as 5 seconds sometimes just from you pressing start or the touchpad to open your map or inventory screen, which you will be doing a lot. NPC townsfolk will often fail to render until you're right next to them, popping in like uninvited kettle corn and scaring the shit out of you. There's a mantle feature in this game where your character can climb objects, but it often just doesn't work unless you're positioned very particularly. I also managed to get stuck and eaten by eels not 10 minutes into my playthrough, though it hasn't happened since, and it was partially my fault for swimming around for no reason, but still, I got trapped on some geometry and couldn't escape and had to just watch as they wrapped around my limbs and partook of my flesh. Bad way to go, man. The lack of polish is something you can just feel as you're playing it, which forces me to give a D grade for that category. But now we move on to overall fun. Fun! The Sinking City is very fun, in my personal opinion. Despite all the hang-ups, despite the lack of polish, it still manages to hook me in with its story and aspects of the gameplay, and keeps me wanting to play it for hours on end, enough time to solve like one damn case. But that just means there's a lot of game here, which means a long time you can spend happy as a Lovecraftian clam puttering around doing casework and slaying monsters. I hope patches can fix some of the polish issues, which can only make this solidly good game even better. The Sinking City gets a B overall on the fun scale. And that concludes this review. All the grades are in front of your face to discern what you will. I do recommend the game to anyone who appreciates the genre and has the patience to deal with its flaws. But that's all, folks. Like, share, and subscribe. This is my first review of this type, but I do hope to make more of them. Follow me on Twitter at Sunburned Albino, and I'll see you guys next time.